I'm going to explain a little bit about what ArtPrize is and how Pitch Night fits into it. But before I do that, I wanted to welcome David Garrity from OST, Open Systems Technology. They, along with Founders Brewing, are sponsoring ArtPrize in this endeavor. And he's going to talk a little bit about what OST does.
Thank you, Kevin. Again, my name is David Garrity, and I'm with Open Systems Technologies. And I was asked to give just a little overview of who OST is, and one of the things that I think is kind of funny about when someone's asked to give a presentation about who a company is, it's too often focused on what they do. We're a technology company. That's pretty much all you need to know. This is more about who we are. We honor our people, honor our employees, delight our clients, serve with humility, and embrace entrepreneurship. And some of you may have seen, we actually had billboards, the Think Big, and that was actually a theme that we had last year as part of our organization. And we're a technology company that was actually founded in Grand Rapids, Michigan, which is how this connection happened. I moved here to Minneapolis 3 years ago to help start an office in the Twin Cities. Moved my 5 children, which if I ever write a book about parenting, there's going to be a chapter called "Do Not Move Your 16-year-old Daughter the Day After Her Sweet 16 Birthday Party." That was not a good idea. I did not win Father of the Year, but she's graduating from Minnehaha Academy this weekend and told me the other day that the move was good for her, so I was pleased with that. And she actually is a ballet dancer, which was part of what tied me in with the art community here in Minneapolis. And the bottom slide that you see there, find your passion. This isn't meant for public consumption. I grabbed this. This was part of our internal kickoff. And it's actually our internal theme for this year as an organization. And one of the things that we're very passionate about, that I'm very passionate about, is the arts. And one of the things that we do as an office here, we've got an office in the North Loop, is we feature local artists in our office. And one of the things I tell the business community is that sponsoring and embracing and supporting the arts is incredibly important for us as business people for 2 reasons. It's very simple. One is these people, the artists in this community, are the creative thinkers, the problem solvers of tomorrow. And to support young and emerging artists is something that I'm very passionate about, and we as a community need to be very passionate about, because these are the people that bring the creative solutions and problem solving to the table in whatever industry you're talking about. And secondly is, as a non-artist, all I know is that being surrounded by an environment of beautiful, creative art fosters an environment of creativity that's needed in the business community. And those, I think, are the 2 primary reasons why we in the business community need to passionately support the arts. And one of our co-sponsors, and this is just kind of a funny story, it's just too serendipitous not to mention this. Brassworks Building is actually where Founders Brewery, which is one of our co-sponsors for this event, it is the official beer of ArtPrize, and I, for one, support anything that has an official beer. So Founders, which I believe you all have an opportunity to sample some Founders beer this evening, was in the same building as our first office. And some of the initial meetings that kind of formed OST took place in the Founders Brew House. Not that we would ever have a beer at lunch. We would never do that. So it's really part of our DNA formed at Founders. And what is the connection to this presentation? Really nothing. It's just too serendipitous not to mention. And this is actually this is my last slide. And this is a random slide that's out of our presentation. And I put it up here just because it's the thing that I'm most proud of as a company. Like I said, we're a technology solutions company, and we have a survey that we send out to all of customers when we do projects. And the last question is, would you recommend OST? And 9.79 is our average score out of 10, and it's something that we're very proud of. And one of the other reasons I put this slide on here is because, I don't know if you noticed, I had 5 slides. And 5 slides, about 5 minutes. I don't know, is that about it, Kevin? That's a little bit of the format that you're going to see tonight from people who are way more creative at this than I am. So again, I want to thank Kevin. I want to thank the ArtPrize. I want to thank the Walker Art Center. I think that you guys are in for a very special treat. And as I said, I'm from Grand Rapids, and one group from the presenters here has an amazing opportunity. And I would also encourage, I'm sure Kevin will say this as well, you might say, why would I go from Minneapolis to Grand Rapids, Michigan in the fall? Born and raised Grand Rapids guy who loves Minneapolis. I would encourage all of you to get over to Grand Rapids, make a trip of it, take part in this ArtPrize. It is an amazing, amazing experience. So thank you very much. I'd like to bring Kevin back up here, and we'll get on with the important part of the evening. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave. Okay, I'm going to give a brief overview of what ArtPrize is. I thought it might help if, before we get into the artist proposals, if everybody kind of knows where one of these projects is headed. So ArtPrize is a yearly exhibition and competition that happens in Grand Rapids, Michigan each fall. This year will be the 5th year. It's the world's largest art prize by the total amount of money given. We give away $560,000 to 16 artists. $200,000 of that are from a juried awards, and the other $360,000 are all from a public vote. It's a pretty unusual event. It grew very fast, and I wanted to talk about just a couple of the kind of high-level design principles that make it what it is, just to kind of give you an idea of its nature. The first element is that it's sort of decentralized in terms of where the art is shown. So we open it up to any place in downtown Grand Rapids. We've marked off a 3 square mile area. Any space in this area can volunteer to host artwork. So you have everything from the art museum, art galleries, to bank lobbies, private residences can even sign up, public parks, and pedestrian bridges like the artists are applying for today. There's even projects usually right in the Grand River adjacent to those bridges. We usually have between 160 and 180 separate locations all around the city, hosting anywhere from 1 artist to up to 150 or 180. Anyone can be an artist. ArtPrize doesn't curate the show. We don't invite people, we just open it up. So really the only rule is that you have to be 18. We have artists from 46 states and nearly as many countries. And we don't define what an artist is. We don't define what art is. And the result of that is a really diverse outpouring of creativity, where you have really cutting-edge contemporary artists that you would expect to see at a place like the Walker or somewhere else, alongside people who are making art for the first time, or are musicians, or fashion designers, or architects, putting together projects and putting it into this crazy event. And the other element about the artists and the venues is that, like I said, we don't actually curate the show. The artists and the venues choose one another. We built artprize.org to operate almost like a dating website, where venues create a profile about their space and the artwork that they want, and artists create a profile about the project that they want to exhibit at the show. Through that, a matching process, which is actually happening on the website right now, artists and venues find one another. So the result is 160 or so independently organized group exhibitions. Each one of them has its own distinct flavor and character. And the winners, like I said, are decided by public vote and a jury. There are 10 public vote winners, $200,000 for the first prize of public vote, and cash prizes for all the top 10. For the juried awards, there are 5 category juried awards at $20,000 each, and there's a juried grand prize of $100,000, which we just added last year, which we're really excited about. Having both the juried awards and the public vote awards creates this tension between populist and professional impulses. And this is something, when ArtPrize began, there weren't juried awards, it was just the public vote. And we noticed this tension right away. There was this conversations happening everywhere, sometimes really heated and really interesting conversations about what is good art and what is not good art and who gets to say, and how does a open democratic voting platform shift the power elements that happen in those conversations. And part of the reason that we added those larger juried awards is we realized that that conversation and that competition between those competing ideas was really the essence of the event. And I think that essence is extended a little bit into this event tonight, into Pitch Night, as we have a jury here to select which project will get a grant to participate in ArtPrize. Just some of the results, just like a slide of numbers about ArtPrize. These are from 2012. We had 47,000 people cast over 400,000 votes, over 1,500 artists, representing 39 states, 46 countries. We had over 400,000 visitors, which, to put that in perspective, the population of the city of Grand Rapids proper is 200,000. So the city is really kind of overrun, which is chaotic and sort of messy, but also is a lot of the fun of it. And it's had a significant economic impact, which is nice. So what is Pitch Night? Pitch Night is 5 artists have applied and been invited to present 5 slides, and they'll each get 5 minutes to do that. And then we have 5 judges who will decide which of those projects receives a $5,000 grant to help realize that project this fall at ArtPrize at a very prominent venue within the event, which is Gillette Bridge. And Gillette Bridge is actually pictured here. It's a pedestrian bridge. It was originally built for a train, which no longer exists or runs, and so it's just a pedestrian bridge. Behind, on the other side of the bridge in this photo, is DeVos Convention Center. It's a very large convention center, and they operate as a venue and draw many thousands of people. On this side of it that you can't see is a prominent public park and 2 of the biggest museums in the city. So this really becomes a thoroughfare during the event, and so it's an exciting spot for an artist to be able to intervene. This year there was nothing installed there, but this is an artist from Portland named Everett Beedler who is performing this apparatus that he made that forces him to walk in this robotic fashion. That was pretty cool. So that's Pitch Night. There will be a time for questions. The judges will kind of kick that off, but the public is welcome to ask questions. I think there'll be some mics floating around, and as Scott mentioned, if you are on Twitter, if you have your smartphone, and you wanted to tweet a question or a comment using the hashtag PitchNight, Scott will be checking those, and it will be a part of the discussion. The panelists are, I have people's titles here. Hold on just a second. We have Chris Larson as an artist and professor at the University of Minnesota. Ben Haywood is executive director of the Soap Factory. Sarah Peters is an artist, writer, and associate director of the Northern Spark Festival. Scott Stullen, artist, curator, DJ, and project director of mnartists.org. And Sarah Schultz, director of education and curator of public practice at the Walker Art Center. And thank you, judges, for helping us out with this. We hope it'll be fun. And with that, our first artist is up, Brock Blagan.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for the opportunity. I'm just going to jump right in. All right. I've never been to Grand Rapids before, so I thought it'd be useful to learn more about the city. And while Googling and Wikipediaing, as my generation does, I was rather startled to learn that this spring, the river that flows through Grand Rapids had the most severe flooding in over 100 years. They declared a state of emergency, and hundreds, possibly even 4,000 to 5,000 residents volunteered their time and effort to fill sandbags and distribute them throughout town. By one count, they filled 6,000 sandbags per hour, or over 100,000 total. In news articles and videos, residents repeatedly expressed their feelings of pride for their city and support for their neighbors. Many brought their kids for a lesson in civic duty. Some of these kids were even smaller than the shovels they were using. One woman, who brought her 5-year-old son to help, who's up there in the middle, she said, "It's setting an example for him to learn how to help out others." So I thought this was a really beautiful gesture and was inspired by it for my proposal. The images at the bottom of this slide show the visitors to ArtPrize to just show how many visitors overrun the city. And as I was thinking about the recent flooding and the upcoming ArtPrize, what I would submit, I began to draw connections between the two. For Grand Rapids and other cities built along rivers like the Fargo-Moorhead area here, spring flooding is an annual ritual that temporarily consumes many of the residents' daily lives and conversations. Similarly, as Kevin said, we could think about ArtPrize as a similar autumn annual ritual for the city of Grand Rapids, where it takes over for 2 weeks and temporarily consumes the city and its citizens. The news, daily conversation, radio, etc. In both cases, the residents of Grand Rapids band together to volunteer their time and effort to prepare the city for the onslaught of either Mother Nature, or in this case, artists and tourists. So tonight I'll present a sculptural project using sandbags as a primary medium. Oh, there we go. I'm interested in exploring the formal and conceptual potential of sandbags because they represent a visual language and material that's immediately associated with emergencies, crises, disasters, and conflicts. However, while they're always deployed for a very utilitarian function, I'm most interested in the process that leads to their creation, the massive amounts of individuals banding together to collectively fill bags, build walls, and protect their fellow neighbors. And while sandbags are often used to save material things and to prevent financial disaster, they're also saving and renewing the community. And this is what I'm most interested in, the social function. In cities that frequently battle annual hurricanes or rivers, this ritual has become ingrained in the culture and over time develops a very strong sense of community spirit, something that ArtPrize may eventually acquire in time. Since much of the flooding in downtown Grand Rapids was contained by their flood wall management system, many of these sandbags were never touched by water, and now the city of Grand Rapids has thousands of sandbags piled up, waiting to be used. At the moment, they're deliberating what to do with them. So I propose to reuse these leftover sandbags as the primary building material for my project. And I'm also interested in using these sandbags because each bag contains the psychic energy and physical effort of the anonymous maker months ago. So the formal nature of the sculptures will be a series of walls and circles that carefully redirect the flow of people across the bridge, similar to the way we use sandbags to redirect nature's natural flow of water. From above, the lines, curves, and shapes will look like an abstract line drawing. From the perspective of the visitors walking across the bridge, the various walls and textures will graciously guide their path left and right. I'm particularly interested in building tall cylinders, a circle of sandbags that's protecting something unknown to the viewer. I like this mystery as it forces the viewer to think about what is worth saving, what might be inside these circles. And these are three-dimensional illustrations. These are images of other artists that I was just thinking about in designing the project. Richard Serra and his monumental steel sculptures, Kandinsky's abstract paintings and drawings, and Malevich and his paintings of the suprematist movement. And I understand that a specific stipulation in the rules is that the artwork cannot be more than half of the diameter of the bridge, and my sculptures will strictly and creatively follow this rule. So I hope that by situating this act of building sandbags outside of a real dangerous emergency, I hope it allows us to focus on the community building aspects of emergency response. Thank you.
Up next, Yusef Del Valle.
Good evening. Good evening. So, like everybody here, the first thing I did when I heard about this ArtPrize was Google search image the bridge. I've never been to Grand Rapids, but the first thing I saw was this image of, I don't know, I want to say several hundred people walking across the bridge in one direction. And I began focusing on, I began obsessing about what happens if an opposing group of people was walking in the opposite direction. And I began really focusing on the clash that would eventually happen. And then I remembered that people are kind of ingrained with the idea of walking always to your right. So a collision would never occur as it would in my head. Sort of an image of the movie 300 where gigantic armies are just coming towards each other, or the movie Lord of the Rings where, again, this situation would happen. So after this, I decided to focus more on what would happen if I were to place a 10 by 10 foot crate in front of the people that were crossing the bridge. And then I further went on to decide what would happen if I were to place 5 10 by 10 foot crates in front of the moving crowds. So I found out that, detours in a way transform space, mostly like detours transform our highways here in Minnesota during construction season. Detours in a way make you focus on maybe some aspects of the road that you haven't noticed, some aspects of the bridge that you're crossing every day, and all of a sudden there's a detour and there's something else to notice. So also, by transforming the space, it kind of turns the crowds moving into each other into a sort of mosh pit, or people trying to get out of a parking lot. So the people in a way are activating the bridge, and the people are activating the space. So in a sense, the people are becoming the artwork. Now, by that being said, also sticking to the strict guidelines of the passageway, people would have the space reduced from 20 feet down to 10 feet, and then they would kind of walk along this winding path that is now being created for them. One of the things that I considered when designing this piece was people are going to be looking at artwork pretty much every day, all day for the 2 weeks. So I don't expect them to believe that my wooden crates are the final piece, or that are the work of art. And with that, it kind of creates a sense of expectation and hope, maybe, that there will be an unveiling of an opening of the boxes when there might or may not be. So I don't know. But it also creates a sense of maybe the people will return to see if the boxes will be opened. And I don't know. We'll just see what happens. Or maybe somebody won't be able to contain themselves, and they'll go in there with a crowbar and just open the boxes, which I'm also expecting and in a way encouraging. But anyway, that's my proposal, and thank you.
All right, next up is Daniel Feinberg and Alexander Hansen.
Two individuals are going about their day, business as usual, when they come across a monolith, a broken down early 90s Chevrolet Suburban, blocking a considerable portion of a frequented footbridge. There are other bridges within a relatively close proximity that could function as an alternative, but the problem is this footbridge, whose dignity has been stripped, as its normal utility has been severely compromised. Knowing that at any moment about 400,000 people may arrive for some arts festival, the thought of this bridge becoming nothing more than a huge bottleneck and a site for visitors to avoid rather than embrace fills the two individuals with horror. The two cannot move the vehicle, but have a specific set of skills used in their personal practices that may allow them to restore almost all the spatial utility to the bridge. Considering the potential for chaos, the two think it best to provide a temporary fix to the blocked bridge until a more permanent solution can take effect.
I'm Alexander. As one of the individuals, my practice is interested in the integration of sculptural objects and environments to create works that are less like an object contained in a box, but an entirely new box altogether. Introduced objects are not merely an elaboration or adornment to the site, but the creation of a new environment that considers the site's original context. This image is an installation made up of 8 wood arcs faced with sheetrock, joined to the wall and painted. The use of construction materials in this case was chosen to match that of the gallery wall: OSB board, 2x4s, drywall, and latex paint. The piece then acts as an extension of the walls, blurring the line between figure and ground. My interest in creating installations that incorporate their environment is to provide a spectrum of harmony and dissonance. A seemingly unwelcome or misplaced object becomes an essential component in the space in question.
I'm Daniel, and as the other individual, my art practice is an interaction between performance, sculpture, and film to relate to concepts that we live amongst daily but often fail to confront. The piece pictured here is part of an ongoing series of performances that fall within a project called Deployment: The Plight of Aught. This particular project relates to whether or not we are justified in being optimistic in the wake of pervasive uncertainty. Pictured here is a performance on an airport runway, where a heavily modified 1986 Pontiac Fiero drove in place on this roller system specifically built for this performance. I continuously ran a 40-yard dash, ending with a collision into the Fiero, 16 times in all, until the airbag finally deployed. I want the sculptural objects, in this case the car and the stand, to be experienced in isolation from the performance, so the viewer develops a relationship to the objects, separate from seeing the way they function within the world of the performance. This hopes to suggest the happenings in the performances are not so different from the happenings in our own world.
After reviewing the situation and considering their skill sets, the two decide to construct a simple wooden stairway that passes over the SUV. Upon completion, the two leave a temporary solution to the problem of the blocked footbridge, consisting of 2 16-foot wide staircases that stand 8 feet tall and span just under 50 feet.
This is the hypothetical narrative behind Temporary's Pursuit of Permanence, a sculptural performance project that will result in a site-specific installation. In the simplest sense, this project questions the distinction between a temporary act and a permanent act, as well as complications arising out of conceptions of moral duty.
This work explores the often ignored tension between what is temporary and what is permanent, and applies specifically to our common conception of these terms, not the extreme notion that everything on our earth is temporary because one day the sun may explode. Based on the fact that we have understood concepts for things being temporary, such as a temporary tattoo, or permanent, such as a permanent marker, we can further interrogate why we consider some things temporary and others permanent. Where is that line drawn?
Regarding moral duty, the project examines if there is a right thing to do in a given situation and whether we are obligated to follow our own moral judgments. If something is done with good intentions but is actually counterproductive, how does this affect whether the act is virtuous or not?
You may also be wondering, why the Suburban? The Chevy Suburban, the longest continuously produced vehicle in the world, has undergone many shifts in utility, starting as a station wagon designed specifically for the National Guard, to farm vehicle, to daily driver for soccer moms, to gas guzzler uncomfortably associated with daily driving. These shifts in utility are similar to the way the functionality of the bridge shifts by the mere presence of the Suburban itself.
Finally, for those concerned logistically, amendments can be made to how much of the bridge needs to be obstructed for the project. Thanks.
Thanks.
All right. Next up is The Dream Combine, made up of Jennifer Newsom Caruthers and Tom Caruthers.
We didn't coordinate who was going to stand on the left or the right.
Well, thank you for the opportunity this evening to speak before you this evening, and if I can get the nervousness out of my voice, we'll get to the matter.
So we have a firm called Dream the Combine, and we thought that the best way to talk about our proposal for ArtPrize was to talk about some of our other work and the themes that are prevalent in our work. So this is a project that was a proposal for MTA Arts and the New York City subway system called Space Destroyer, and it reflected our interest in infrastructure, public space, and the constructions of image. So instead of thinking of subway stations as a series of disconnected nodes within a network, we were interested in thinking of the city as a continuous arcade. So using live video and projections as a way to map one space onto another. So there's a kind of simultaneity and a conflation of the image in the picture plane, the conflation of image at the end wall of the station by projecting the view down one platform onto the end wall of the adjoining station. So here you're in Atlantic Avenue Station and seeing down into 7th Avenue, which is the next station platform. So we're kind of interested in the juxtaposition that can occur when people are provoked to think about their neighbors in a new way. What's the relationship between these two different disparate neighborhoods, and our project hoped to kind of heighten that relationship.
Which brings us to the first built project we're going to have this year in Minneapolis, which is for Northern Spark. This project is titled The World is Rated X, which comes from a Marvin Gaye song of the same title, which is dealing with this idea of the absurdity of living in image. And here, what you're looking at is it's a structure that spans between two images. Similarly to the image machine or technology or weapon or whatever that we were talking about in the previous slide, here there's cameras at each end of this that you can see described by the X recording outwardly, and projectors take that image and project it correspondingly to the screen further away from that camera. So the result is this production of three space types here, and I think comes to the heart of our response to Northern Spark, is this presence for this sort of wonderful singularity of time and space and place, that for one evening you get 80,000 or 60,000 people to this one location. This idea of being present came about, like, how can we create a place that people are not going to forget? And so here we have the space outside looking sort of end on with the piece. Then you have this interior kind of social space where people can interact in a way where they're shielded by surveillance equipment from surveillance. And then, again, the sort of further view beyond. So for our ArtPrize project, it's called In the Upper Room, and we propose to construct 5 vertical theaters along the bridge. These spectral towers of river and sky will be wrapped with mylar mirror film on the outside, ripplingly reflecting the city of Grand Rapids and the bustling life of the festival. Internally, the audience will enter a chamber where down is up and sky is water. The sky is usually reflected off the water under a bridge. We propose instead to project the water onto the sky. We hope to make a transporting experience that binds heaven and earth. Along a kind of vertical axis, you can think of a bridge as a boundary between the river and the sky. And one of the sort of frustrating things when you're walking over a bridge is that you miss the river, you miss the water. So we're taking the tack of projecting the water onto these screens that will be strung across the top of the inside of these vertical towers, in a kind of, like, again, conflation of a real and virtual space. And I thought we had more time, but we started the timer early. So
basically we're going to use scaffolding parts to build these very, very tall towers and wrap them in Mylar and use a series of projections on the inside to kind of create this watery experience on the inside. And as far as the outer material is concerned, we're kind of intrigued by the fact that the surface will appear very slippery, watery, and like oscillations of reality and a kind of impossible time warped space. So thank you.
All right, next up is Percy Chester.
I'm delighted to be here, and thank you all for coming out this evening. My proposed sculpture, Squealies for Wheelies, is part of a new series with ideas of motion and balance using vibrant color that's playful and positive, designed to engage with people of all ages as public art. Having begun my career as a painter, I'm especially delighted to combine color in a new way with three-dimensional material. The images you see before you are a recently completed half-scale model. There were two previous models, and each one evolved into what we see here. I was very excited to hear about the Gillette Bridge as a site. It's about movement and passage, and I feel it's a perfect fit for Squealies for Wheelies, which is also about movement and travel, bringing people together. It's an abstract depiction of the American icon, the youthful joyride. Typically, the male has been behind the wheel as a subject in the classic American joyride. I decided to have a woman at the wheel of the convertible. Initially perceived as a complex set of abstract forms, further observation of the sculpture reveals the deconstructed convertible, suspended in air, doing a wheelie, the height of the joyride. It contains 3 female figures, each embodied with the other, like expanding coils. From every vantage point, the view changes. The linear forms and shifting color propel the eye around the piece. The form of Squealies for Wheelies was inspired by Slinky Toys and Roadrunner cartoons. The work's shadows play a key element in its design, becoming a line drawing that continually moves around the piece with the changing light of day. The shadow extends the work's visual reach. Shadows of pedestrians are literally drawn into the work as they pass. Although stable, the piece is kinetic in parts and moves with wind or human touch. The full-scale Gillette Bridge Squealies for Wheelies would measure approximately, well, we lost it. 7 feet high by 6 feet wide by 12 feet long, and functions very much in human scale. Painted with enamel automotive paint, the form is a laser cut from a 6 by 10 foot sheet of steel, a precise form that expands. The total weight is about 1,700 pounds. That would be comprised of 600 pounds for the sculpture, and the base would secure it onto the bridge. The studio model's undulating base has a mirrored polish finish, which allows for reflections of the colorful sculpture, the sky, and the observer. I propose locating Squealies for Wheelies 1/3 the distance across the bridge. Serving as cues to visually introduce viewers to the piece, I would install pairs of either LED solar lights or reflector mirrors, metaphors for skid marks at intervals along the bridge platform. I'm very excited about the possibility of sending this piece to Grand Rapids. I believe it to be spirited, playful, and upbeat, and it would add an exciting, exuberant dimension to the festival. I would appreciate the opportunity of completing this mission. Thank you so much.
Okay, now I would like to invite all of the artists back to the stage to sit in these hot seat chairs here. So this is the portion where, I'll ask the judges to sort of kick this off, but the audience as well can ask questions about these proposals. And, part of the design of this event that's a bit unique is that it's sort of a blended Q&A. So you can ask questions of any one of the artists during this time. And I'll ask the panel to kick things off with whatever they're curious about.
We're going to have a fight down here about whose question. Okay, so first of all, thank you so much for these presentations. It was really delightful to hear you all speak about your work. And I have a question sort of for anybody who wants to answer it about the context of making art in the middle of a bridge that will be very crowded, which is, I think, an interesting challenge. And I guess just to address that, Yusuf, you used a phrase that I think is sort of hilarious about turning the bridge into a mosh pit parking lot, which is a vision that I have in my head. So I'm wondering if you could speak about the dangers and challenges of creating an interruption in the middle of a very busy thoroughfare. Anyone?
I think art is about imagination and about exciting that kind of energy and fantasy that people might have from literature, their experience, their past, and having an image that can somehow stimulate imagination and let them get carried away, especially in a fun, humorous way, I think is an important aspect of our lives.
I guess, while a lot of these are physically an interruption, I guess I don't really think of them as really interrupting, but giving people an opportunity to kind of think about what's in front of them. This is ArtPrize, so people are kind of ready for anything and excited for these things and excited to be confronted with the different things put forth throughout the festival. So I think that people will enjoy and embrace it. They may be irritated, if they have to walk back and forth 15 times after a while, they may not like it so much, but they definitely, it'll cause them to continue to think about it quite a bit.
On top of that, I guess, because you're actually putting an object on the bridge, you are forcing people to spend time with it, so I guess that has its pitfalls as well as its upsides, to where people are forced. I think, Brock, maybe you mentioned it's sort of like a detour, which is an interesting way to think about it, I think.
There's, on the one hand, you've got this sort of tantalizing excitement of producing something that responds at different scales. So you've got something that can be seen when you're, we've mostly been talking about the experience of walking down the bridge and encountering these, and whether there are obstacles that force you to move this way or ascend this way, or whether they're, like I think we've been talking about this sort of way of going, a sort of alternation of your experience going across the bridge is one thing. There's also the fact the bridge actually operates at the scale of the city also. And so, what does that mean when you're coming out of the museums and down the sort of park side, and what do you see? And does the piece operate at that scale, and does that increase your audience? Is that something that's desirable? So that you can talk about the sort of excitement of the experience, but there's also, I think, in answer to your question, there's also like profound safety sides that, the sort of space positive, space negative questions you see in composition, where are you pushing people and the flows of people, too close to the edge, or, where do you need a railing? So those are sort of practical things that I think you need to be aware of. But I think with the dimension of the bridge, there's certainly room for maybe excitement first.
The mass of people and flow of people across the bridge, like you said, is a lot of what my project is influenced by, and I wanted to like deliberately look at that path and slow them down and put them through the types of detours that we often put nature through, like with rivers, and just sort of like making their flow not exactly their natural flow of just getting from one side to the other. I think we do that a lot with rivers, creating artificial bends, and I wanted to do a similar thing with people walking across the bridge, so they become more aware of that.
Sort of to answer your question, I'm a drummer in a death metal band, so mosh pit parking lot sort of comes as
Band name.
sort of comes as second nature. But I think all of us kind of want this sort of interaction to happen both between our pieces, but also between the public itself. So I think putting people close together is sort of like it presented itself as a challenge, but also as it's also the reward, I think, in a way. So, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, so thank you. I echo Sarah's comments. Thanks for presenting. It's great to see so many interesting projects inspired by this challenge problem. Again, I've kind of got a general question, and I think Tom was starting to answer what I'm interested in. And but as you all presented, I started to divide you into two groups. One of which are artists who are primarily interested in the interaction of the pedestrians on the bridge itself with the objects, the intervention that you make onto the bridge. And then others who seem to be also concerned with what is the view from the two sides of the river onto the bridge. So what are you looking at if you're not actually on the bridge itself? I don't know if any of you can kind of comment on that, especially perhaps some of the artists who've been talking more about how people are going to interact with the works as they're moving across the bridge. How are you going to experience that work if you're not on the bridge? And I guess I'm kind of looking at Brock, and I'm kind of looking at the middle combo there, and I'm kind of looking at you at the end, Yusuf, as those.
Well, I'm expecting people to see my gigantic boxes as a wall, which was going to be my original proposal. And I do want it to be a blockage, sort of. I want it to look impenetrable, but then as people get closer, they'll find that it's accessible, and then once again it becomes inaccessible in a way, to a certain degree, within safe limits. But that's my hope. And if traffic is constantly at 400,000 people, it would be. That would be a dream.
Just so it's clear. Just so it's clear. There's not like 400,000 people like on the bridge like all day, every day, going back and forth. It's like over 2 weeks.
Daniel.
Yep. I guess the expectation is that these would be pretty visible even off the bridge. I think almost everyone is making a structure that would have some sort of presence on the bridge. Be it the sandbags or the blocks. In terms of the three you pointed out. So with our project, I'm just imagining that people will see this stair structure, or essentially a bridge on a bridge, and it will kind of entice them to go and discover why is this structure there. And it's at that point that you get close to it that you realize, there's this broken down suburban underneath it that kind of creates this narrative and this story that makes sense of it and brings up the things that we were talking about.
And I think along with that, I think it is accessible from off the bridge, like viewing it from a distance, but going over it and interacting, it actually reenacts that initial desire to cross. So I think it works both ways.
Yeah, with mine, when you're walking across the bridge, you kind of encounter these walls and you have to kind of go right or left. But the way I design them are not like rectilinear. I want them to be almost like a line drawing when viewed from the aerial. And the slide that I showed was a series of sort of like drawings that I made of the bridge from aerial view. And to me, it almost looks it's almost reminiscent of like musical notes or like a weird kind of hieroglyphics that go from one side to the other, just these little marks across. So I hope if you're like on a rooftop or in a business building, if you look down, it'd be like a series of marks on the bridge.
I've got two follow-up questions. One for Tom and Jennifer, which is how this projection project is it going to work during the day, or will it be just during the night? It seems to me that certainly the exterior mylar is going to work well for daytime, but the interior may have problems during the day.
I think the aspiration is that it's going to function both day and night. We've been doing full-scale mock-ups for the project for Northern Spark, and balancing the need for pretty intense projection with the fact that for safety reasons we've actually got some pretty large, I don't know what type of light they are, but they're quite bright, sodium halide or whatever it is. And we discovered this inexpensive lycra mesh that produces kind of a beautiful transparency where the black image, when there's black in an image where it's projected on, you can actually see through. And so the hope, and again we would want to test this obviously, is that a couple layers of this lycra mesh held back from the outermost limit of this thing would actually create an area where you have a projected image that's always in shadow, that could be projected on and becomes in a way like the foreground or the first layer in your experience of the sky. So that was kind of a very early think about, like, oh really? Well, how could we sort of take this idea we've been doing in sort of horizontal and turn it vertical?
Yeah, and I think also, there's something sort of magical about how the piece can kind of transform from day to night, like reflecting the passage of time. So, the idea that during the daytime when the sun is more pronounced, obviously on a cloudy day, like you can get projectors that are strong enough that you would still achieve the effect. But, we're thinking that these things are actually quite tall. So, and then the part that's actually the oculus that has the screen and the projection could be smaller relative to the actual size of the kind of tower. And I think that on the interior surface of those walls, since it's quite tall, you will still get that kind of watery effect. So it'll be projected both on the sky and on the insides of these towers. So there's a kind of interplay between the outside of this rippling mylar and then the inside of this kind of rippling water. So I think that effect will still be pronounced during the day, and then it will only get more intense as it descends into dusk, which will probably be the kind of golden hour of the piece, and then into the night.
Thanks. And just so that everyone gets a question from me that requires an answer, Percy, why is this on the bridge? What makes a car sculpture suitable for a pedestrian bridge?
For a joyride, the bridge seems like the natural setting because the fact that it's pedestrian, people can actually engage with it, and it changes as you walk around. It looks very abstract. They're going to want to explore it and check out what it actually might be because it's hard to read at first, and the reflection of the base also distorts because there's the undulations of the shape. And leading to it, having solar, either LED lights or reflectors, will catch the light and have a sense of expectation, I guess, to where am I going, what is this leading me to? And the engagement becomes more in their head than necessarily, it's on a human scale. They can see themselves going for this joyride, seeing this thing that's shaped, going up into the, fantasy, into the world, into the sky.
Thank you. Thanks.
I have a question. Okay, well, I don't know what your question is. I have a question for Brock about the sandbags. I thought you did a great job setting up this context where the sandbag as a familiar experience in Grand Rapids is as a community project. So I'm wondering if you imagine a similar process for the creation of your proposed piece.
That's something I thought about, and there's a couple ways I could go about it. One would be to make several site visits and try to recruit volunteers to help make the sandbags, and it would sort of be it would be really interesting if I could find people who both loaded the sandbags and also wanted to contribute to the art process. And with that, I'd be interested in, of course, listing all the people who helped physically make my sculpture, in along with the many unnamed people who helped to fill the bags. So it'd be a combination of unnamed makers and named makers for this piece. The alternative, if for example I couldn't find volunteers who'd be interested, I'd budgeted out sort of how many hours I could get out of people at $10 an hour, but so maybe like 300 hours of labor for $3,000, for example. But ideally, I'd like to go about trying to find volunteers who are interested in the project, liked the idea, and would want to contribute in a similar way, because I think that's a more interesting part of the project.
So first of all, I want to say thank you. I want to echo Sarah's comments and Ben's comments, and thank you all for really great projects and how thoughtful they all were. So I have one specific question, and then I have one general question. And my specific question is for Dan and Alex, which is, are you currently in possession of the early 90s Chevy Suburban SUV?
No.
However, the goal is to get the Suburban in Michigan, and since the Detroit Motor City is in Michigan and GM is a Detroit company, and the Suburban is such a well-known and early 90s were good for the Suburbans. So I don't think we're going to have a problem finding one. Yeah.
Okay. And so sort of building off of this, and I do mean this in the most positive way of ways, and I am known as both a bit of a pragmatist and a bit of a worrier amongst people who know me. If each of you could just maybe talk briefly about what is the thing that might go the most wrong in actually producing your project, I think that could be potentially helpful. Thanks.
Question. In producing or in execution?
In producing it, and actually maybe in producing the project or even actually having the project up. What will happen with weather? Could weather be a potential deal breaker? Could be locating materials be a deal breaker? Could.
Well, I will say that for our project, we're both graduate students at the University of Iowa, and we've already met with the engineering department there, and so their biggest worry is wind, and so we have that stuff covered. We're working with a graduate student in that department who's getting his doctorate, and so worries along those lines we're trying to take care of as best as possible.
My piece will be weighted by the base underneath the high polished section, and I can weight it so that it won't go anywhere. But what I do like is how it has the sense of not a flag, but it does have movement and kind of encourages people to get close. It's very subtle, but it won't go anywhere.
Sorry, I needed some time to think about your question. I guess the potential risk, or the thing that could go the most wrong is people climbing on my wooden crates. Yeah, I guess I really hadn't thought about people climbing. I thought about people vandalizing or maybe potentially destroying the crates because they were just so fed up with them, or But I guess it would be pretty tall, 10 foot. I mean, it would be fairly difficult for one person, but if somebody gets a caboose, it wouldn't be a problem. So that could be the thing that goes the most wrong for me.
Jennifer said I shouldn't say this. I was jokingly thinking, like, what's the worst thing that could happen? Well, it'd be a change of site last minute. So we had this rendering up on the screen, and you've got these sort of colorful Mylar thingies, and you just think like, right, and like whack, and okay, great, that's not great. So the idea is that we're using standard scaffolding parts. We have an engineer who's a close friend of mine from high school that is engineering our present piece. The question would be, is the bridge strong enough that we could get enough dead load in terms of sandbags or otherwise to sort of weight this thing down to the base? And we'd been thinking in these early sketches that were on the screen that there'd be a slight ramp up and a slight ramp down, allowing a cavity for that kind of thing. And the cavity would be for weight, and the cavity would be for projectors possibly. The other aspect would be that the Mylar, we're thinking about sort of boat wrapping the exterior of these things, which I saw recently at an airport in Amsterdam, where they were doing exterior work, and a piece actually at the soap factory, and it works. So there would be a tension between having sort of a continuous plastic skin on the outside and the need to have obviously wind go through that and release the wind load. And I think that the rippling and that kind of movement, because we're not looking for a tense glass facade, is actually kind of inherently kind of conceptually good. So that's my kind of major fear. And first, our initial thoughts on not having that fear be experienced.
That's a good question. The first problem for me would be being able to access the used sandbags that are piled up in Grand Rapids. I've tried contacting James Hurt and Greg Sundstrom, who are sort of in charge of doing so. They haven't answered phone or email this week, but I'm hoping ArtPrize could hopefully facilitate that. The other problem would be, but even if worst case scenario, it kind of ruins a little bit of the poetry of the project. I could theoretically purchase sandbags and sand, and the material cost alone would be probably around $2,000. So that would be worst case scenario for the sandbag access. Labor, we talked about getting volunteers who are interested in the project versus paid. And then the last concern would be obviously like a wall falling on someone if someone like bumped it or ran into it. I've been looking at multiple ways to make the wall. There's the sort of like super duper way where the width is 3 times wider than the height. That's like the levee system that the like Army Corps of Engineers recommends, where the width is 3 times the height. Or like my 3D up there was just 1 row of sandbags. I would probably use 3 rows of sandbags, sort of like cross-hatched both ways so that it could withstand the force of someone like running into it or pushing it. But there could be a series of tests to find how much force it could take without having to go with the full-on like Army Corps structure.
Well, I want to reiterate just how thankful we are for this, what's already been said, but just that, and also, this is a really difficult format to do this, and really kind of acknowledging that as well. This isn't usually how this is done. So I thank you for participating and being part of this experiment and kind of putting yourself out here at these proposals, which are all wonderful. So thank you for that. A lot of my questions have been stolen, so I'm going to, and including my one about people trying to destroy things, which we just did the mini golf course here, so it's very much in my mind about people not using things as intended. But if we were giving you another 30 seconds or another minute for your presentation, what else would you like to add to kind of add to your presentation tonight to convince us on your project?
30 seconds.
Well, I guess I'll go. You hold up the yellow flag immediately, because yeah. Okay.
Bonus points.
Well, I guess to reiterate the reason that we really have enjoyed developing this project is because it speaks to not only the pedestrians' relationship with the bridge, but also this kind of strange relationship with the two characters in the narrative, their concern with the well-being of this bridge, which is kind of used and ad nauseum throughout the year, and especially at ArtPrize. So kind of that dual dynamic of caring is something that we would like to emphasize, and also just to reiterate that this will kind of it'll be like a jungle gym in terms of like how well it will be put together, and how whether or not we want people to climb on the side of it or jump on it or anything like that, that all should be fine, because that's the type of stuff that you see happening in a playground. So it will be of the same nature as that. Thanks.
Okay. Well, I hope that the experience of our project, if it's chosen, is a poetic one, and I think that the bridge operates on multiple levels. I mean, I think a lot of the questions that spoke to that. There's the individual experience of crossing a kind of boundary, and there's the way a bridge performs at the scale of the city, and then also thinking about a bridge as this kind of horizon line between the water and the sky. And I think that our piece would be a kind of condensing kind of space for that experience. So if you think of these kind of multitudes of people crossing this bridge, and they're kind of dispersed on either side, when they go through our piece, it's sort of an opportunity to kind of linger, be close to one another, change your vantage point. Instead of traveling horizontally, think about the kind of vertical axis as well. I don't know if you want to say anything else about it.
It seems like a lot of effort if it's not going to get remembered, right? So if you can, and whichever project is chosen, my hope would be that it just snaps people into being present, and you get this kind of like great interaction, between people, because that's, when you're in the middle of the bridge, right, boring, it's just going A to B, but if there's that moment where people actually get to speak with each other, it's a democracy, like that might be good.
One thing I forgot to mention was that the sandbags that they use are 3 to 4 different colors. There's white, orange, black, and sometimes burlap. And I hope to experiment with the different colors to create both, there's the formal structure of the sandbag walls, but there's also within the wall a lot of potential for patterning with the colors of the sandbags. And I hope that would be an interesting way to reinforce the project visually. And then the last bit of the project that I'm kind of interested in is the poetry of using the excess of humans trying to control the flow of nature used back again to control the flow of humans instead. So kind of like that the excess of humans is used to control humans.
My work is about using my hands, and I think the handiwork and the delicacy of the piece is something that will engage people in a way that could be pretty intimate and stimulate imagination for children who want to make things and can feel it. And the color, which is car paint, has been amazing to me as a painter, just because it's almost like Japanese lacquerware in that it builds up in layers of transparency, and the color I think is pretty spectacular. And the hope would be that this image of this joyride moving up is very positive and energizing and stimulates imagination and the sense of joy.
I guess my what I didn't mention or I don't know if I did. What I would want people to most take out of this is to acknowledge sort of the freedom they have every time they potentially cross an empty road or an empty bridge, and they just have the freedom to cross it, and sort of to experience what happens when that freedom is limited in a way. But also for them to know that they're doing it for a reason, because there's these giant boxes that may have something in them, that may not have something in them, but they're kind of putting up with it because they have maybe a hope or an expectation that something could or could not come out of that. So.
So Scott took my last question, but maybe if you could, all the proposals were fantastic. So thanks for all your work on that. Maybe if you could just conceptually go a little deeper into your response to the bridge. Bridges are usually, I find them fascinating. The metaphors are deep, sometimes cheesy, but I see as sort of two groups of Percy and is it Jennifer and Tom, more celebratory, and then your proposals are a little more devilish, where I think it touches on catastrophe a little bit with the wrecked cars, and Brock's bringing up memories of flooding and Yusuf literally blocking and causing a bottleneck. So maybe just go a little deeper, just conceptually, why your response to the bridge was as it was.
I guess to me, a bridge is essentially a tool, and it's a tool that you use to cross over an obstacle. In this case, the obstacle itself being the river. And I just kind of wanted to throw in an extra obstacle, I guess, but also. I'm interested in the people engaging the bridge. I guess bridges can be ignored fairly easily if there's nothing really to hold them there. And I think all of the projects here have something that'll hold the viewer's attention. So.
Well, bridges bring people together, and seeing something that they want to explore is an important magnet, and I think that would be the reason why I would want them to come to this object, even though there would be this series of reflectors or lights that would bring them closer, but the bridge itself is a way of bringing both sides together and having something to come towards and move away with, but take the fantasy or take the image with you as it changes in your mind as you look at it, as it changes when you look at it.
So the nature of the bridge is to bring two bodies of land closer together. So our piece is devilish in a way that it creates a block, but it steps away from that by attempting to return the usefulness of that bridge back to it. Do you have more to add?
Well, I think everybody's talked about the top surface of the bridge, and I think that we're really interested kind of conceptually in the underside of a bridge. It might be a space that seems more macabre or something, like where the trolls live or something like that. But I think there's something really beautiful about passing over a bridge and peering over the edge and seeing the sky reflected off of the water. And we have this fascination with the undersides of highway overpasses and things like that. But I think since we can't actually mount anything to the underside of the bridge, really kind of manipulate that area in any way, we're using video and projection to make a statement about what's happening on the underside, about what's going on underneath the bridge. So kind of flipping or mirroring what's happening from below to what's happening above, I think, is part of the poetry of our piece. And I mean, maybe it is celebratory, but maybe it's also just kind of revealing and thinking about the bridge as in terms of bridge as a three-dimensional object, not just as like a surface that you walk over.
I think that's fair. I think I do appreciate that we're probably maybe putting forward a positive foot, and so the celebratory thing is probably right. But it also catches me a bit in the chest because I guess I'm not sort of looking at the bridges and going across the bridge as kind of a victory lap. Like this is, at different scales, like viewed from afar, this thing is this like pretty wry comment on all these static reflective buildings that are sort of dumbly trying to be perfectly flat. And here are these things that sort of like picking up on the mobile architectures you see in carnivals and things, sort of mimicking the movement of people going across the bridge. But then once you're inside, the idea is to like dump a cold bucket of water over people and give them something that while they're outside, maybe in the late fall heat, are sort of drenched in a completely different overlay over their present experience. And so there's hopefully a projection and production of shock and maybe different release and alternation is a desired quality.
I went to the U, so I spent 4 years crossing bridges, and one of the most interesting ones is right outside Kaufman by the museum there that Frank Gehry designed, where it's a nice it's not the most efficient way across, but it's a nice curve across, and I think there's something really beautiful about like an inefficient way of crossing a bridge, from one point to another. The straight line isn't always the best. I mean, it's economically and more efficient. But so in creating these little detours for people, I hope to redirect them towards the outside, like towards the views, towards looking out on the city, on the river. But also these walls, and like in the sadistic way of making them change paths. The other side to that is that these obstructions also create little private nooks for people, where some of the walls might be coming from the edge and might provide a little private spot for people to have some more peaceful experience with the bridge. So, but then of course, why select something as ugly as sandbags? With that, I also want to direct people towards thinking about why we go through so many different hoops to try to control nature. Like Grand Rapids has all these series of big walls to control flooding as they need to to sustain humanity. But yeah, I want them to sort of think about that in addition to crossing. So those are sort of the deeper things.
Well, we're going to need to break pretty soon, but I did want to just see if anybody in the audience had any questions or comments at all.
First of all, excellent presentations, and as whoever is selected, I want you guys to know that OST is a sponsor. We want to be a resource, whether it's getting Rick Santorum to return your phone calls or finding a used car dealership or finding a good lumber yard. And that is not out of some altruistic support of the arts. In this case, I'm highly competitive and I want my team to win. So along those lines, do you see and this is a question across the board, do you see your piece, your concept, as appealing more to the jury side of the tension that Kevin talked about, or more to the public side? Keeping in mind that the public side is people need to like it, but they need to like it, they need to stop, they need to pull out their phone, they need to find your number and tap your number in, and they need to vote for you. So I'm curious across the board, which side of that tension you see your concept falling more on?
Well, when it's put to me like that, the competitive athlete in me is like, yeah. But no, I mean, I think our work straddles the line between both. Well,
Is it either or question?
I don't know. I don't think I can't say both. Well, no, but okay. I can't say both. Well, I mean,
It's not possible to win both categories?
No, it is. It is possible.
Right,
Yeah.
okay. So yes, yes.
well, no, okay. I think it has to be interesting, and people who don't understand the whole like kind of high art concept about it still have to be intrigued and be inspired. And you know, I think that we both have a very strong interest in doing work that is in public places. So, you know, sometimes the audience is like highly educated about art history, and we can talk about Jeff Wall picture for women photograph, and like I mean, there's like a lot of sort of the back end story of it is rooted in maybe a more academic like background, but you know, then there are people who are just like, do I like it? Is it delightful? Does it make me think? Does it make me pause? And I think that especially with a site that is so prominent and public and you know, it's visible from pretty much like everywhere else that the festival is occurring. I think it's important for the piece to kind of straddle both of those categories and appeal to both of those audiences. So, you know, when I'm developing the project, I think about the fact that it's in a public place and what do I want to say about public space and the way people interact in public space. You know, but everybody goes to a museum and has their own interpretations of the project. So he's probably going to disagree with me. This happens all the time.
I guess I'd be okay with saying that I'm not going to try and second guess the public, and I'm not going to presume on you guys. So I would probably just say neither, and just say that we've. Yeah, and if it flies, great, and if it doesn't fly, like, all right.
Can answer both, or can't?
Yeah.
Can. Okay. I think for sure both. I think with both of our individual practices as well as this piece, we don't want to make something that is incredibly alienating to a wide public, 400,000 people, but also like goes into those deeper layers of the project. So I think with this, I think it does it successfully in a way that those ideas can be teased out of the project without any specific art historical context. Because at the end of the day, someone's going to see a bridge built on top of a bridge with a Suburban underneath it. So yes, I think it can go both ways in that instance.
I would have to say 100% towards the public. I mean, my project is geared entirely to them. And actually, as to go into the question of the jurors, I guess I hadn't really thought about it, and I'm actually anticipating. This is another reason, I guess, why Facebook needs a dislike button in a way. But I mean, my project is geared 100% towards my audience, and I guess I had no consideration for you guys, unfortunately, or to whoever's going to be. Yes, so.
So I just had an open studio May 4th where this model was in view, and people walked up to the piece, couldn't leave, kept smiling. It was just a joyful, I have to say, people. I think it evokes, when you see it in vivo, it's very different than seeing the images, but there's something about it that stimulated joy and real, I think celebratory is a good term to use. So that would be my comment.
Well, I think jurors are people too. So I don't know. I think it's interesting because it brings up the kind of, Tom asked the question earlier when we were all just kind of sitting around and waiting for things to get started. it's a puzzling thing, this right here, what we're doing, right? So like ArtPrize is not a curated show, but yet the Walker in collaboration with ArtPrize is curating their, entry into ArtPrize. So I think that, whichever piece is chosen comes with the backing of this institution. So, take what you will from that statement, but I think that it's good to consider both.
So you're saying that regardless of the answer, the piece that's chosen tonight implicitly has the backing of the professional class, and so the question is, like, do you think you have a chance at also winning? It's back to both. No.
I'm really not concerned about winning the public vote. I don't think it's really I don't think it's reasonable to think that it could win, given I've looked at past winners and such, like hyper-realistic mosaic, two-dimensional work and stuff. And I mean, that's fine with me. The type of experience that I want to create isn't necessarily like a like it or not like it kind of response, and I'm really okay with that. So, I mean, even if they're annoyed that it took a little longer to walk across the bridge, I hope that after the fact they might sort of have a more lasting thought that might make them cross the bridge again and appreciate it in a different way. So I'm not really worried about an immediate loving response.
All right, the microphone is out, so we'll do one more question, and then we'll break for the jurors to deliberate, and then we'll announce our winner after that. So one last question.
Okay, I have I have some very specific questions for Mr. Blagan and Dream the Combine, kind of off of Ben Haywood's, I think, original question, which was viewing it from off of the bridge. So, Mr. Blagan, how tall do you see these walls being? And I'm sorry if I've missed some of these. And then for you two, is it are you expecting your projections to be seen through the material at night as part of the movement of the material, or as part of the movement of the sculpture seen from outside? And then just one other very specific question about it. What are you projecting? Are you projecting pre-recorded video? Are you projecting actual video captured of the water directly below? And, how are you going to light that at night? Or is that lit? Or is that video? Or what? Just a little bit more specifics on the video aspect. So thank you.
Good question. I forgot to mention the height. I do want to have varying heights. At some points, I do want to definitely be higher than human height, so like maybe 7 feet, maybe. Particularly when I make a full circle, so that you absolutely can't see into that circle. That would be the most important time for it to be really high. But other times, I imagine it would be between 2 and 5 feet tall to meet the range of most sandbag walls. But I do like the experience of sometimes not being able to see all the way to the other side of the bridge.
So the projections are live video of the water below. And I think it's important that it is live because you'll have the vagaries of weather, of time, of, just, I think the experience will be richer if it is live. And I think that, in answer to your other question, I see it as kind of an internal environment. Like the piece is different on the outside than on the inside, but they both speak to one another. I think that depending on, and we'll have to, we would have to study this, but depending on how it's kind of slit to allow the wind to pass through, like maybe there might be an opportunity to see the projections on the inside, but I really think of it as being this kind of tall vertical chamber that you enter, and you're kind of confronted with something new once you enter it. So.
Okay, excellent. Did you have one more thing?
Oh yeah, just with the height. Sometimes the height doesn't always have to be like uniformly straight across. It could be like slanted or like up, down, So.
Great, thank you for those great questions and great discussion. Let's give these artists a round of applause. So we're going to break now, but stick around. There is beer and other refreshments. Founders are one of our presenting sponsors. Excellent microbrewery in Grand Rapids has beer here. And the judges are going to talk, and we'll have sort of a social hour for 20 minutes. And then we will announce the winner tonight before the Walker closes. Okay, everybody, thank you for coming back in. Sorry about the confusion of switching venues. I was reminded that the live stream is happening here and not out there. So, the winner of the first ever ArtPrize Pitch Night in collaboration with the Walker Art Center is Daniel Feinberg and Alexander Hansen with their Suburban Bridge on a Bridge. I left my novelty check in Grand Rapids, so.
Thanks everyone for coming.
And thanks.
Yeah, thank you everybody. And you'll see images of this thing installed, or hopefully you can come to Grand Rapids and experience it yourself. Thanks.